Welcome to the Louisville Urban League's Workforce Wednesday, a 60-minute virtual series led by the region's top corporate recruiters, offering leadership development and professional trainings. Tune in monthly for our live hiring events from many of the best corporations in Louisville, Kentucky.
This week, our special guest is Cynthia Brown. She is the Managing Director for the Center for Entrepreneurship at the Louisville Urban League.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining Workforce Wednesday. My name is Yana Vines. I am the Workforce Project Administrator here at the Louisville Urban League. And I just want to thank you all for joining us here on Zoom, also on Facebook. And we have a great Workforce Wednesday planned for you. We have our special guest, Cynthia Brown. She is the Managing Director for a new department here at the Urban League called the Center for Entrepreneurship. And Cynthia, in her job, she works with project partners, and she helps to launch the Black Business Initiatives as proposed under a path forward. And her primary focus is on the development of sustainable access to capital and coordinating of pro bono professional services to Black businesses in Louisville in an effort to drive the growth of Black-owned businesses in our community. So before we get started, I do want to just go over a few housekeeping notes. I'll ask that you keep your microphones muted. And if any time during the presentation, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And at the end, we'll have time for question and answers. This session is recorded, and there will be a short survey at the end of the session that I would like for everyone to complete. So without further ado, we'll get started with Cynthia Brown.
Here we go. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. This is actually my first Workforce Wednesday that I'm getting to participate in. So I'm happy to be here and happy to share with you all. So my name is Cynthia Brown, and I'm the Managing Director for the Center for Entrepreneurship, which, as Tiana said, is a new program here at the Urban League. So I think what I'll start out is giving a little bit of background on how we came to start this department and why we started this department. The Path Forward is a document which, if you haven't read it or heard about it, you can access that at a pathforwardlouisville.com.org, I believe. And then that will give you a little bit of background on that document and what's in it. But at any rate, the Urban League worked as a convener at the very start of the pandemic and trying to bring Black leaders, nonprofits, and allies together to discuss pandemic resources. And just how nonprofits were able to negotiate that in terms of having to adapt services and going to a virtual world and everything that came with the pandemic shutdown. In the summer of 2020, as everyone knows, the city began to experience some social unrest in response to the murder of Breonna Taylor, and in particular, the murder of David McAtee, which followed shortly after the protests began. And from that point on, the conversation switched a little bit to what we needed to do around social justice, and then changing things for Black Louisville. Black Louisville, I think, was carrying the brunt of things that happened during the pandemic, and then the activities that happened around the police brutality. We were just experiencing a lot, and I think everyone was kind of at peak frustration. And so we decided to really kind of outline a plan of what needed to happen for Black Louisville. And so instead of saying, things need to change, we wanted to actually be able to articulate what things needed to change, who needed to be involved in that change, and then in particular, the funding that was going to have to go around making sure that we were able to initiate that change. And so out of the Path Forward came several initiatives that were focused around jobs, but in particular, Black businesses as a form of self-employment, but also education and housing. So for the Black business piece, at the time I was doing small business development for another organization working mostly in underserved neighborhoods, in particular West Louisville, in South Louisville, and really working with populations that experience additional challenges to starting a business. And so as we start to put our heads together, we tried to identify what was missing for Black businesses in Louisville, which unfortunately was pretty much everything. There were some local resources, public resources that provided some training and some access to funds, but what was available was pretty limited. One of the things that we experienced and saw during the pandemic was that as resources were made available, a lot of Black businesses still weren't able to access those resources. The city launched a program that was COVID relief grants. There was also the SBA, which had several different relief programs, but a lot of the Black businesses that we were working with at the time were just not able to access those. So one of the priorities, obviously, around Black businesses or businesses in general that businesses need to get started and to grow is access to capital. But beyond that, we knew that businesses were going to have some preparation and some technical assistance to provide that back office structure so they could actually get through an application process to be able to access those funds. And so those were two things that we really outlined as priorities and what needed to happen around Black businesses. As things progressed, we launched these initiatives and we started working with AMP's Russell Tech Business Incubator, which is a program that was founded by Dave Christopher, who runs the AMP program, which was a arts-based programming for youth. And he developed out this concept for an intensive incubator experience. So this was for businesses, and I'll talk a little bit more about what's actually in that program later on. But this was an intensive incubator experience for Black businesses to have all of the challenges that they typically will face to be met. So that's financial, that's mental health, and all of the other things that go into it. However, this program is only able to take in about 30 participants at a time, and the cohort was 1 year. So as we were working with them to develop strategy and to be able to garner funding for it, we noticed pretty quickly that what was going to be able to be supplied was not going to meet demand. In the first 6 months, when I came over to the league to start managing these initiatives, without the league ever really being in a business development space, we probably got about 400 calls. And so those were through email, calls coming in through other programs, just calls that we were getting. I was getting information from everywhere, from LinkedIn. People were messaging me on Facebook, you name it. So we decided that there needed to be some structure and there needed to be a front door for people to begin to access resources. I'm going to get through this little introduction part, and I see that Cynthia has her hand raised, and then we'll take a little break to be able to answer some questions. So during this time, there was such a high volume that was coming into the league and that was also coming in through AMP. We started fleshing out what it looked like to be able to deliver services to people and what was actually needed. And so this is how we came up with the concept for the Center for Entrepreneurship. And basically, the Center for Entrepreneurship is to be that front door. And so that's businesses at any stage, whether that's new businesses, existing businesses, businesses that are still in the idea phase. We were willing to meet business owners where they were and to really identify what it is that they needed and what challenges they were facing, and how do we connect people with the right resources to be able to move their businesses forward. And so to that end, we have access to coaching. So we have business coaches that are on staff now that are able to meet with entrepreneurs one-on-one, just provide some individual counseling and really understand where businesses are and what they need, and to start to plan out some action steps and some goals for those businesses, and then what resources are going to need to be in place for it. We also have a financial coach on staff, which is able to begin some of that initial financial work with businesses. So that's establishing budgets, whether that's startup budgets or operating budgets, and really understanding how to create projections that are based on numbers that are real. So they test, assumptions, things like that, and making sure that those numbers are real to project where businesses could go or what kind of revenue that they do need to bring in. And then we also have, as Tiana mentioned earlier, one of the biggest pieces that I think that you'll find that we have that a lot of other places have not done before is that access to professional services. So we are developing out a network of primarily Black service providers that cover categories from marketing to legal, to accounting, HR, whatever kind of services may be needed, but those are the three primary ones. And we have some funds to be able to cover the initial starts of those services. And so it just has to be connected with, what you discuss with your business coach and the goals that you're trying to achieve. We will make the connection between the service providers, and you have the autonomy to be able to discuss what it is that you need, and then outline those services. And the league has some funds in place to be able to cover that. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how the services are working. We do have partnerships with AMP's Russell Tech Business Incubator to kind of keep track of people who may be interested in that application process and being part of that cohort. It is very competitive. As I said, they can only take 30 or so participants per year. But we also have some relationships with the SBDC to begin people to prepare financial packages to apply for funding. We have a credit repair person that is actually on our staff that will work on credit reports and getting those cleaned up to increase those credit scores, to increase the chances for access to capital. And then we also have lots of partnerships with various other folks around town, especially our capital partners. So places like the CDFI, L Home, if anyone's ever heard of that, as well as some other capital providers. So that in a nutshell is what the Center for Entrepreneurship is and what we have to provide. I want to talk a little bit more about just kind of what we're seeing and what typical business owners experiences in terms of challenges, some best practices and things like that. But I'll go ahead and open it up for questions, and then we can move into that.
So if you have a question, I'm not certain if you can speak, but if you cannot speak, please type your questions in the chat and we will respond to those. Okay, and while we wait for questions to come up, Cynthia, what are some of the tools, I know you mentioned that, they need to get their credit together, they may need to financial assistance, but what are some other tools that every entrepreneur needs in their toolbox in order to be successful?
One of the things that I would say is I think a lot of times entrepreneurs get into creating their businesses a lot of times out of necessity or by being able to take a skill or something that they love to do. And a lot of times it may start out as kind of a hobby or what people like to call as a side hustle, and then, turn that into a business. But I think a lot of times what we see is that because it happens that way, a lot of the planning, things that could happen or should happen in the early stage of businesses, or developing out the structure of a business and really sound business models, doesn't happen early on. So one of the things that I would recommend for anybody that's interested in starting a business, or even if it's an existing business that you've been working it kind of informally, there's a tool called a business model canvas. And what a business model canvas is, it is a one-page document that has 9 boxes on it that represent different components that really need to be present for a business. And it's much easier to work with than, I don't recommend people starting out with, a 30-page business plan. A lot of times there are a lot of things that you need to think through in terms of how your business is going to work, how it's going to draw revenue, who your customer base is, what is the value that your business is offering, what is it going to cost you to do this business, what partners or assets do you have to have in place or to have to work with in order to be able to do the business. And so this business model canvas is a very, very good way to outline a lot of those components. And it's typically bullet points. So it's much easier to really see like where there may be gaps and what needs to what you may need to think through a little bit more for your business model. I know it sounds kind of contradictory, but there are a lot of times people will go into a business and really don't have a very clear idea of how that business is going to make money. A lot of times they think, okay, well, I can provide this or this service, And so I'll be able to just charge for that. But really thinking through that model of, is it going to be, just customer, or is this going to be kind of like a subscription based model or a membership based model? So there are several different ways that things can be done. And I think the more of that thinking that you can do upfront, I think benefits the business, and benefits, and really kind of gives it on a good trajectory to be sustainable in that way, if those things are thought out. Another thing I think some businesses miss, of what we've seen a lot of, that actually did block a lot of people from accessing some of those pandemic resources, was just having that back office structure. So we've talked a little bit about professional services. So, having an accountant in place to be able to pull those financial reports that might need to be submitted with an application. But even beyond that, there are just some base structures in terms of actually having the business registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and keeping that in good standing, which is not a difficult process at all. Making sure that you are having your tax IDs in place. Making sure that, there may be other regulations depending on what industry the business is, just making sure those guidelines are being met. So I think just little, what I call like those housekeeping things, those nuts and bolts of starting a business, the earlier that you can get those in place, the easier they are to manage versus trying to backtrack on some of those things, a year or 2 years into the business.
Great. So I was a business owner. I had a boutique in the Highlands for like 2 years, and I moved over to New Albany because the Highlands is really expensive. And what I ran into was that I was trying to do everything myself. As you were just mentioning, some of those back offices, I was doing marketing, social media, doing the taxes, hiring, training, operations, running the store. I was there from like 8 in the morning to like 8 at night, and it was just 6 days a week, and it really drained me. I got burnout, after like 2.5 years, I got burnout. And so what are some suggestions for new entrepreneurs, small businesses getting into the line of work to kind of help work-life balance so that you won't experience the burnout?
Well, I think that just kind of comes with the territory to a certain degree. The life of an entrepreneur isn't for everybody. I think you do have to have a special personality and I think a tolerance level for work. I think there's the misconception that comes with being your own boss. And there are some perks that come with that, as far as, having the flexibility to set your schedule, having a little bit more control over your finances and your earning potential. However, it does come with a lot of responsibility. And most small business owners starting out have to wear all of the hats. Now, having said that, my suggestions in order to be able to manage that, one is to have a very clear operations plan. To say, these are the day-to-day things that need to be done in order for this business to operate. So having a really good understanding of what those things are, I think is helpful. And from there, you can really kind of understand, what can I delegate? What do I outsource? So maybe instead of me spending my time creating content and doing social media, I can find someone, for an affordable rate that actually can do this for me, which actually is economically probably going to work out better if I'm not having to spend my time doing those kinds of things. So I think having that clear understanding of the responsibilities and things that need to go into the operations makes it easier to pick out what you can delegate or what you can outsource to somewhere else. Right now, I think there are a lot of digital tools. So I think the more you can increase your digital literacy and understanding what tools are available to be able to streamline or make operational processes more efficient, just in terms of, customer management systems, things like that you can utilize, that takes a lot of that heavy lift off of you. Those would be two of the suggestions I would make to kind of create that balance, is knowing what to outsource and what you can do in-house, and how to make what you do in-house a lot easier and more efficient.
Great. We have a question Jamelia Young says, yes, this is a reality for me as well. I'm the worker, the manager, the promoter. I feel as though my business somewhat suffers because I do not promote as much as I need to. That is true. I understand that. I know
it's definitely hard to promote the business when you're actually having to work the business as well. So,
Joe Newland says, when does the application process starts for the next cohort?
So for the Center for Entrepreneurship, for us, you can come at any time. Before we end today, I will share the link. There's a link to a short form that's on our website. That's just a general inquiry form that just gives us a little bit of information about who you are, contact information, and a little bit about your business stage. And then from there, we use that to be able to start scheduling you for one-on-one appointments with a business coach. So that's rolling and at any time. For the Russell Tech Business Incubator, their next application process typically starts sometime around November. So I don't actually have a definitive date yet of when they're going to open up those applications, but typically it will start the application process around November. They'll do interviews through December, and then the next cohort starts in January.
Great. So are there any opportunities to join your team in the Center for Entrepreneurship? Since this is workforce, we're always looking to provide opportunities for people to also get jobs too.
I think that will be a reality at some point. Right now, we started the Center for Entrepreneurship in January. And I think to date, we've probably had about 600 inquiries that have come in. We've got about half of those people actually enrolled actively in coaching services. So right now, I think a lot of it for us is just really kind of managing that volume and making sure that everyone gets the same quality and level of coaching services. But, you know, as we've been working with a lot of these businesses, one of the things that we are seeing is just a need for some kind of access to consistent staffing, especially for a lot of the restaurant and food service based businesses are really struggling in keeping, you know, consistent staff. So I think eventually there will be some points of connections that we'll be able to do in-house with our workforce department to say, okay, these are the kind of jobs that people are having posted or that they're looking for now to fulfill, you know, the employment needs inside of these businesses, and to be able to develop that pipeline through who's coming through our workforce programs right into, you know, the employment with some of the businesses. So just give us a little time. I think we're gonna get there. But right now we're still in the very, very early stages of launching services. So we're gonna work through those little kinks first, and then we'll move on.
You guys are off to a great start. I think you are doing a great job, Cynthia. So keep it up. We also have a question from Cora. She wants to know, is there a site for digital services? And does the Urban League offer a class for this as well?
Okay, so there isn't one site, or at least that I'm aware of, that really gives kind of a comprehensive listing of digital services or things that are available. We did do a partnership with U of L's Digital Transformation Center. I guess this was maybe about a month or two ago. They did cover just some of the basics in terms of, you know, developing a website yourself, or what to talk to a website, you know, developer for, how to incorporate some of the customer management services, you know, into your website, how to understand and track what's happening with some of your digital platforms. So really understanding the analytics of, if I spent, you know, X amount of dollars doing some Facebook advertising, you know, how many people did that get in front of? What was my return on that? How many was I able to actually convert to, you know, actual customers? So there are things like that. We probably will do another round with them. We don't have a date set for that yet, but the Digital Transformation Center has a lot of information and a lot of curriculum already developed on how to employ digital services into business. And so I think that we'll we'll pull out some things that we're seeing that are trending with our business owners in terms of need, and then we'll probably work with them to develop out a curriculum that, you know, pinpoints what those greatest needs are. So, I mean, definitely, you know, if you enroll with us, you can talk it over with, you know, one of our business coach, and we'll pull from resources. But as of right now, there isn't just one place that is very easy to go to say, hey, I need this. Let me go here and see what they have, you know, available for that. So you just kind of have to do a little bit of, you know, searching.
Cynthia Hughes wants to know, Cynthia, you mentioned my personal credit being a certain level. If my personal credit isn't the best, how would that affect my receiving funding or grant money to start my business?
Okay, so we actually get this question a lot. And it seems kind of contradictory at times when we talk through, you know, managing finances with business in terms of making sure that you have your personal assets separated from the business assets. And that's something that is still highly recommended, just to have that level of protection. That's one of the reasons for, you know, setting up an LLC, is that the business is set up as a separate entity and you can kind of keep those assets separately. So in the event that something should happen, that it's only the business assets that can be utilized. However, when it comes to actually accessing finances, most lenders will require a personal guarantee. In particular with businesses and new businesses and businesses that are just starting, there is no business credit even available to base a risk assessment on. So having your personal credit in good standing is absolutely essential to getting financing. And even in the cases of established businesses who have been operating for a while and do have business credit on deck, lenders will look at that. But a lot of times they still will require what they call a personal guarantee, which will require that they actually look at a person's personal credit and have them sign off as a guarantee on that loan. So in addition to trying to develop and build that business credit, it's still always recommended that you keep the personal credit in really good standing. So, you know, whatever your credit score is, it does affect your ability to be able to access financing. Now, there are different types of lenders. So what that threshold is going to differ. So for your traditional financiers, such as commercial banks, they usually have a cutoff credit score. And if you don't meet that cutoff at that credit score, then it's an automatic denial. But then we have places like CDFIs, like Home that I mentioned, that are by definition community development financial institutions. So that means they are mission-based. They have guidelines in place that they are to serve underserved markets and populations. And so they have a little bit more flexibility in the underwriting standards. But it still is recommended that, you know, personal credit is always going to be looked at. Now, how it gets looked at is going to differ from, you know, who the lender is.
So, personal and business credit. So if you're building your business credit, what are some of the things that you need to do to build the business credit? Like get a DUNS number. What are some other things you need to do to build the business credit? Okay,
so things like that are helpful. Opening up, you know, a credit card or having a line of, you know, credit that's under the business. And I say that, but be very, very careful with that. Establishing, you know, that credit card is really not a lot different than how I would recommend, you know, opening up a personal credit card. You want to make sure that you're using that credit wisely, that you're adhering to the terms, you're not making late payments, those kinds of things. And so how business credit is managed is very, very similar to how personal credit is managed. In addition to opening up a credit card or a line of credit, there are other things that you can do in terms of having credit with vendors. So let's say that there's a supplier that you have to work with on a regular basis. If you can open up a line of credit with that vendor, having that on deck, it will help build business credit. So things like that.
Okay. Jamelia Young has another question. If you've been contacted by someone regarding an application, does this mean that you're in line for the next cohort?
Yes and no. So throughout the year, as the current cohort is going on, as people are coming through our services and as people are coming through services at the incubator, they have a waiting list. And so they're just adding names to that waiting list. They will probably have started to send out some information in terms of what the next cohort is going to look like, a little bit about the program itself to see if people really want to apply. So that means that they have your information and that you will be receiving information on when the application actually opens up, what that process looks like, those kinds of things. But as I said, it's very competitive. So I would be real careful about saying like, okay, you're in line for the next cohort. But that just does mean that they know that you're interested, and we'll be sharing information as the process progresses throughout the year and leading up to that application and interview process.
I think it's wonderful that the Center for Entrepreneurship offers one-to-one services, but do you guys offer other workshops, panel discussions where, you know, a group of people could attend and gain knowledge as well?
Again, that is something that we're planning for in the future. I think for us being in these early stages, it was really to kind of understand if, you know, what we had designed as our service delivery model was actually effective and was kind of meeting people's needs. But even in these early stages, we are learning that there are people that are experiencing some of the same things and that could benefit from either what we're looking at as small group coaching sessions. So people who are either in, you know, the same industry or in the same stage, or maybe, you know, ready to prepare for submitting financing applications, those kinds of things. We are looking at designing some curriculum to meet those specific needs. Also, as I mentioned before, we did the class with U of L digital transformation. So there may be some more partnerships in the future to do some really specific and targeted, you know, classes and seminars that are open for, you know, the clients that we have enrolled, but that are also open for anyone to be able to come to. So those are in the planning processes now and should launch fairly recently or soon.
That's great. So if someone's interested in learning more information, how can they reach you? What's the best way for them to contact the Center for Entrepreneurship?
The best way is to utilize the link that is on the Urban League website. I will share that in the chat. But as I said, it's a small, really short inquiry form that will just get your name, your contact information, and then just a little bit about your business or what your business idea is, to get an idea of the stage that you're in. And then from there, we have a coordinator who will reach out. She'll talk to you a little bit more about your business, and then we'll get you scheduled with a one-on-one with the coach.
Great. Okay, so one more question. Jamelia, what credentials are needed to be on the helping end?
Well, in terms of our professional service providers, we have, you can access it on that same link that I sent. There's a link to what we call a provider registration. So we're just asking that the providers that we work with just provide some minimal information, making sure that businesses are registered. Say, for instance, attorneys that are not in any kind of, you know, disciplinary actions or disbarment, those kinds of things. So we're doing fairly minimal vetting on the professional service providers side. But just in general, for volunteering or anything else that's related to the center that you think that you might have to offer that would be a benefit to some of the entrepreneurs that we're working with. It really just would be based on what it is that, you know, you're skilled in, or what it is that you want to offer. We don't really have hard and fast rules in terms of, you know, credentials that need to be in place to be able to work with us. So if you're interested, you know, there's that provider link, or you can just reach out and we can have a conversation and talk about it. So
So, if someone's interested in learning more information, how can they reach you? What's the best way for them to contact the Center for Entrepreneurship?
The best way is to utilize the link that is on the Urban League website. I will share that in the chat. But as I said, it's a small, really short inquiry form that will just get your name, your contact information, and then just a little bit about your business or what your business idea is to get an idea of the stage that you're in. And then from there, we have a coordinator who will reach out. She'll talk to you a little bit more about your business, and then we'll get you scheduled with a one-on-one with the coach.
Great. Okay, so we think that's going to end our session today with Cynthia. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing about the great opportunities and resources that you guys offer at the Center for Entrepreneurship. I want to also invite you all that are here with us today to tune in next Wednesday. It's going to be a virtual hiring fair. So we'll have two companies that'll come on. They'll share about the opportunities, benefits, and incentives at their company, and then the ways that you can apply. So that'll be a virtual hiring fair next Wednesday, August the 31st, 12 to 1. So if you are available, please mark your calendar and tell anyone who's looking to look for a job to join us as well. Also invite you all to like and subscribe to the Louisville Urban League's Facebook page, also our YouTube page. You can follow us on IG and LinkedIn and Twitter as well. You can also visit our website at lul.org, where you can learn more about all of the programs and services that we offer here at the Urban League. We focus on health, housing, education, jobs, and justice, and now entrepreneurship, Black business. Invite some of your friends to join us next Wednesday. There are so many great things happening here at the League and in our community, and we need your help to spread the word. And thank you again, everyone, for attending. See you guys next week. Bye.